Good day to everyone watching this video. As the title reads, today we are going to review the book Achtung Panzer, a military stratagem written by none other than the venerable German General Heinz Guderian himself. Before we begin with a guided tour of this insightful and riveting take on tank warfare, I have some things to tell you. First, this video doesn't require your immediate visual attention, which means it would suffice to just listen along, because I won't be quipping too many references from the pages of the book, and for most of the footage, which is going to be inevitably long, you will be seeing the cerulean and serene cover of this book published by Widenfield and Nicholson and edited by the English historian Paul Harris. But if you insist, I shall just keep the pages with chapter headers open just to show you some peculiarities and the interior of this book. So you are free to cycle, go to the gym or drive while playing this video. Second, for mutual conveyance, this video will be divided into four broad aspects pertaining to the book. First, who was Heinz Guderian? Second, the content and main ideas propagated by this book. Third, audience catered to by the book and whether this book is right for you or not. Fourth will be my personal thoughts on the book, as you know I've also included the review word in the title. Another thing I am willing to tell you is that I'll be using a script for this video. I know, sounds weird and unethical, right? Well, it's not that the script is copied or stolen from somewhere, but the Pelagus foresight is that I am an introvert who has a fairly nifty command over the English language, but has problems articulating thoughts at the spur of the moment in front of an audience. I get anxious to put things without prevarication. So here you can, I don't know, see the script. Well, it's not the top-notch script you would have been except expecting, but it's just good enough to make do, and I am really sorry for the video quality. Lastly, there'd be a bonus at the end for you guys, which is strictly off limits for a person who has not read the book yet, because some statements in that part could accord a certain bias to your own way of reading the book. Anyway, let's cut to the chase, starting with the first point. Editor Paul Harris provides an insight into Guderian's life in this part right here, from which you can relate to a certain extent why Guderian did what he did and why he thought how he did. So yeah, who was Guderian? Anyway, sorry, it's a jerry-built apparatus, and yeah, again sorry for the video quality. Heinz Guderian was born in the town of Kolm on the banks of River Vistula in 1888. Although military was not a long-withstanding tradition, his father, Friedrich, decided to enroll him into the military during Guderian's boyhood itself. We must note here that Guderian's secondary education in cadet schools left him with awesome French and English, which opened him to the vast military literature available in those countries post-World War I. In February 1907, he was enrolled as an ensign cadet, which is an officer who is not fully trained yet, into his father's unit, the 10th Hanoverian Jäger Battalion. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce Jäger. My German pronunciation is not top notch. Anyway, the 10th Hanoverian Jäger Battalion can be considered as an equivalent of the British Rifle Brigade. He then completed his officer training in December 1907 and joined as a second lieutenant in the same unit. He married in 1913 and didn't see much frontline action in World War I, which could be because he was occupied with the signals and communication unit for most of the war. Guderian was quite proud of his education at the German General Staff through the War Academy in Berlin. And this book seems to be concomitant with the German General Staff's way of thinking, because the book makes no abstract conclusions but analyzes the past and finds solution for the future, which is a quite reasonable approach. So here's a fun fact for you. Erich von Manstein was Guderian's classmate. Anyway, after World War I, the German General Staff was dissolved and demand for officers which graduated from it increased. Guderian's big break came in 1922 when a certain General von Chischwitz asked his assistance in the establishment of motorized divisions for combat. That's when Guderian got into tanks. From then on until the 1930s, he taught and propagated the German doctrine on tank warfare to transport officers, and he was regarded as an authority on tanks, even though he didn't sit in one until 1929. His friend General, oh, sorry for that, really, General Gen, General Colonel Rutz replaced General Stuttnagel as a general of motorized troops and made Guderian his chief of staff in October 1931. The Lutz-Guderian partnership was instrumental for the German tank arm. Although they had secured the approval of the German High Command and the Führer on the grounds at Kummersdorf, they had to compete with the other arms for resources, and that's why Guderian was ordered to ride Achtung Panzer in the winter of 1936-37 on direct orders by Lutz, his immediate superior. So then we go now on to the summary of the book. Anyway, the book was meant for a military audience, but the chain of cogitation allows a sufficiently informed reader to follow it. A testimony to this book's success is that the proceeds from it bought Guderian his first car. In the first part of the book, Guderian concerns the readers with the positional warfare in World War I and distills important lessons from them. The first few battles talk about the futility of cavalry on the battlefield and Guderian cites the action at Harlan, which I don't know, it might be visible right here. Action at Harlan, 12 August 1914. Anyway, sorry for that too. Where cavalry was not able to break through a shattered defense. Sorry, I need to change the pages. Sorry, really, I'll try to improve things in the future. He then turns the fire onto the infantry by alluding to the inability to break through the first battle of Ypres, and also brings to light the inherent advantage of the defense over the offense due to the appearance of modern machine guns and trenches in the battlefield. He then goes on to allude to the similar lack of striking power in enemy infantry, thus consolidating his point. But thus consolidating his point about how they were unable to break through as Champagne despite repeated offensives and numerical superiority against German fortified positions and artillery. This is oh, wait a second, I'm really sorry right now. Anyway, I can't find the page of Battle of Champagne. Nah, not this. Sorry, really. Yeah. This is the Battle of Champagne in 1914-1915. Anyway, these apparent disadvantages of being on the offensive limited the Western Front to a deadlock by November 1914, when all forces lost their striking power. In order to break this deadlock, countries turned to novel weapons and their deployment in order to achieve surprise and shock. The Germans initiated gas warfare on 22nd April 1915. Again, I'm really sorry. Yeah, this part details about the gas warfare. But failed to exploit it with reserves and thus squandered their opportunity. The Allies were able to deploy countermeasures, and it soon lost importance for the offensive army and rather supported the defensive. The British headed in an entirely new direction, which is mentioned in the genesis of the tank, intending on the use of a vehicle similar to the Holt Caterpillar tractor to cross trenches and barbed wire. They were the first to come round to the deployment of tanks as we know them, and the pioneer of the movement was none other than the British officer Ernest D. Swinton, who Guderian often quotes and seems to share views with him. The French movement was pioneered by Colonel J.B. Estienne. Yeah, it's here. who hit upon the idea of a powered vehicle to cross Western Front's hellish landscape when he saw the British using whole caterpillar tractors to tow their artillery. The British too squandered their opportunity at surprise by throwing tanks in penny packets on 15 September 1916 at Somme. Consequently, the tanks only achieved limited tactical successes and not operational ones. French tanks had their baptism of fire on 16 April 1917 at the Iron. I don't know, it's AISNE. Anyway, my French pronunciation is also apparently poor. And this is the battle at Iron. An offensive that was a failure due to well built German artillery positions which laid down pinpoint fire, and also due to the inability of French troops to exploit tank breakthroughs. Both sides made considerable mistakes when it came to tanks. The British tied them in penny packets, the French tied them with the infantry, and the Germans had no anti tank defense at all. The British learned their lessons, the French did that too, but right until the end of the war, the Germans did not have any specialized tank defenses. The lessons learned at the lessons learned during earlier battles were applied by the British at Cambrai on 20 November 1917, achieving a breakthrough. Wait a minute, I'm really sorry. You holding right there, buddy? Sorry, I'm just trying to improve my accent. I'm really sorry. Yeah, this is the tank battle at Cambrai in November 20 November 1917. Anyway, the British the British pushed the Germans back from the Hindenburg Line, a German defense line which had resisted many offensives. The tank battle at Cambrai followed the three principles put forward by Swinton, namely convenient terrain, shock, and en masse deployment of tanks. The tank battle at Cambrai was a huge success, although expansion into the operational domain could not be done due to the lack of reserve troops. The French employed their tanks against the German thrust towards Paris and the subsequent Gneisenau offensive that opened up later. It's given here. German Spring Offensive, Soissons and Amiens. The French employed considerable tanks against the German Gneisenau offensive on 9 July 1918 with considerable success. The Germans still didn't have any effective tank defenses and were inevitably surprised when the French turned up with the light Renault tanks between Missy and Chardon. Combined Allied forces comprising the British, the Canadians, Australians, and the French broke through German lines on 8 August 1918 and expanded their success into the operational domain by putting German armies on the retreat and forcing the Germans to consider surrender. We must take notice of the lack of nationalistic chauvinism in Guderian's writings, since he freely admits that the British and French won due to sheer military ingenuity and grit, and also criticizes and to an extent denigrates the actions of the German High Command regarding anti-tank defenses and the lackluster German tank program. Guderian then takes us on a ride through the tank and motor garrisons of major European powers post-World War I, elaborating upon British, French, and Russian doctrines. The British doctrine was shaped. The British doctrine was shaped by the geopolitical position. They slashed military numbers and sent older tanks to be scrapped or sold, keeping only the latest ones for further developments. They focused on creating fully motorized detachments and brigades, which would be of great help to an ally in case a major continental war broke out in Europe. An experimental mechanized brigade was set up in 1928, which was converted into an armored force in 1934, complete with mechanized support and signaling complete with mechanized support and signaling detachments. Guderian comments that the incorporation of light, medium, and close support tanks with bigger calibers in the same company allows exploitation without reliance on stationary artillery and infantry on foot, thus ensuring a fully fluid conduct of battle under a unified command. So that's it for the first part, and we'll elaborate upon French tank doctrines later in the second part of the video.